What happens when hype meets reality? In 2006, Brandon The Truth Vera wasn't just a rising star in the UFC. He was the star in waiting. With jaw-dropping talent, a magnetic personality, and a bold claim to become a two-division champion, Vera had the fight world at his feet. Fans believed him. Dana White believed him. He believed it himself. But what happens when talent, hype, and ambition collide with the harsh realities of MMA? How does a career full of promise turn into a story of what could have been? This is the rise, fall, and lasting impact of Brandon Vera, the fighter who almost had it all. Let's go back to where it all began, Brandon Vera's roots. Now, he wasn't your typical MMA fighter who grew up dreaming of UFC gold. His story starts in Norfolk, Virginia, in a family of Filipino heritage. Life wasn't always easy, but it shaped him into a disciplined and resilient guy, a trait that he would carry into his fighting career. Before he was throwing kicks and elbows, Vera was just a regular kid who found his outlet in sports. Wrestling became his first love, and it didn't take long for everyone around him to notice that he had something special. You know, that one guy in high school who is just a freak athlete and makes everything look easy? That was Vera. But there's a twist here. Vera didn't go straight from wrestling to MMA. Instead, he joined the United States Air Force. Perhaps that is where he molded his discipline. While in the Air Force, Vera sharpened not just his body but also his mind. He learned how to work under pressure, how to push through pain, and how to stay focused no matter what. These lessons would serve him well when he eventually transitioned into fighting. Now, here is where things get interesting. After leaving the military, Vera decided to chase his passion for combat sports. He found his way to Lloyd Irvin, a name that carries some serious weight in the world of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA. Training under Irvin, Vera didn't just become good, he became dangerous. His striking was sharp, his grappling was slick, and his confidence went through the roof. By the time Vera made his professional MMA debut, he was already turning heads. His early fights were like a highlight reel: knockouts, submissions, total domination. It wasn't just that he was winning, it was how he was winning. He had this smooth, almost effortless style that made it clear he was something special. And boy, did the UFC notice. When Brandon Vera signed with the UFC, it was like Christmas morning for fight fans. Here was this undefeated fighter with a background in multiple disciplines, a personality that could light up a room, and a look that screamed superstar. Dana White and the UFC marketing machine went all in on Vera. And honestly, Vera made it pretty easy for them. In his first few UFC fights, he absolutely wrecked his opponents. Each performance felt like a statement. I'm not here to be good, I'm here to be the best. His striking was on another level, his grappling was underrated, and his charisma was undeniable. Vera was confident, and he had every right to be. He was calling to be a double champ in the promotion when no one had done it before. This was way before the times of DC and McGregor, when every other fighter tried to gun for the double champ status. And here's the thing, fans believed him. How could you not? He was undefeated, destroying everyone in his path, and carried himself with the kind of swagger that made you think, yeah, this guy might actually pull it off.
Now, I know you have been wanting to be a double champ since, I believe, back in your UFC days, right? Mm-hmm. So what would it mean for you to finally become a double champion?
This would mean that no matter how long it takes, no matter how hard, no matter what roads you cross, whether you turn left when you should go right, you should never give up on your dreams. No matter what your dream is, you should never ever give up on your dream. That's what it means to me, and that's what I'm hoping I get to show.
The UFC was all in. They saw Vera as a future megastar, someone who could bring casual fans to the sport while dominating inside the cage. He wasn't just a fighter, he was a marketing dream. And for a while it seemed like the hype was 100% justified. If you had to pick a single fight that encapsulated the Brandon Vera hype, it is his 2006 bout against Frank Mir. At the time, Mir was a former heavyweight champion, a guy with serious credentials. The fight was supposed to be a test for Vera, a chance to see if he was really as good as everyone thought. Spoiler alert, he was. From the opening bell, it was clear that Vera wasn't intimidated. In fact, he came out like he had something to prove. Less than 2 minutes into the fight, Vera landed a brutal knee to Mir's body, followed by a relentless barrage of punches. The referee stepped in, and just like that, it was over. Fans went wild. Here was Brandon Vera, not just beating a former champ, but making it look easy. The hype wasn't just real, it was undeniable. At this point, Vera seemed like a lock for a title shot. He had the skills, the confidence, and the momentum to back up his bold predictions. But as we all know, momentum can be a tricky thing, and it can turn against you in an instant. And that's what happened on June 7th, 2008, at UFC 85 when Vera came face to face against Fabricio Werdum. Now, let's get one thing straight. Fabricio Werdum wasn't just some guy. He was one of the most feared grapplers in the heavyweight division. A Brazilian jiu-jitsu wizard who could tap you out faster than you could blink. But this fight wasn't supposed to be a problem for Vera. At least that's what everyone thought. He was faster, more explosive, and better rounded, or so it seemed on paper. The fight didn't start terribly for Vera. He looked sharp in the stand-up exchanges, landing crisp kicks and punches that reminded everyone why he was so highly regarded. But then Werdum got him to the ground and everything changed. Vera managed to survive for a while, but the end came suddenly. Werdum unleashed a flurry of ground and pound, and the referee stepped in to stop the fight. Now here's the kicker. The stoppage was controversial. Vera popped up immediately, furious at the referee. He felt that it was an early call, and to be fair, a lot of fans agreed. But the damage was done. A loss is a loss, and this one marked the first blemish on Vera's UFC record. And just like that, the aura of invincibility was gone. From here, things started to unravel. Not all at once, but piece by piece. While the Werdum fight marked his first major crack in Vera's career, what happened outside the cage didn't help. Around this time, Vera began dealing with some serious contract issues with the UFC. Negotiations dragged on, and rumors swirled that his management team wasn't doing him any favors. To put it bluntly, there was a lot of drama behind the scenes. The UFC, as we all know, isn't the most forgiving organization when it comes to fighters trying to negotiate better deals. Dana White, the face of the UFC, has never been shy about cutting ties with fighters who push too hard. For Vera, this tension with the organization led to a period of uncertainty, where his career felt like it was stuck in limbo. On top of that, Vera's decision-making when it came to his team raised some eyebrows. It's no secret that a fighter's success often hinges on having the right people in their corner. Managers, trainers, and coaches who can guide them through the ups and downs of the sport. Unfortunately, Vera seemed to struggle in this department. Whether it was bad advice or bad luck, the result was the same. His career lost momentum. After the Werdum fight, Vera made a big decision. He was dropping down to the light heavyweight division. On paper, it made sense. At 6'2" and weighing around 220 pounds, Vera was a smaller heavyweight. Cutting down to 205 would allow him to fight opponents closer to his size while taking advantage of his speed and agility. But in reality, the weight cut was brutal. If you have ever tried losing 15 pounds in a week, you know it's no joke. Vera wasn't just losing fat, he was losing water, muscle, and energy. The physical toll was enormous, and the mental strain just as bad. Fighters often talk about how weight cuts mess with their heads, making them feel sluggish and irritable, and Vera was no exception. His first fight at light heavyweight came against Reese Andy at UFC Fight Night 14 in 2008. Vera won the fight, but it wasn't the dominant performance that fans were hoping for. He looked slower, less explosive, and frankly, not like the same guy who had run through Frank Mir just 2 years earlier. The weight cut might have made sense on paper, but in practice it took away some of the very qualities that had made Vera so dangerous in the first place. By 2010, the UFC landscape had changed. New stars were emerging, and one of the brightest was a young, lanky fighter named Jon Jones. At the time, Jones was still climbing the ranks, but it was clear to anyone paying attention that he was a generational talent. Unfortunately for Brandon Vera, he became one of Jones's stepping stones to greatness.
Man, it's gonna be a great fight. People gonna talk about it for a while, and it's free on TV. Come on, man, yeah.
I think Brandon's really full of himself. You know, he said he's not impressed with my resume, and he said that I'm all hype. Well, after this fight, I hope he will be impressed with my resume, because his name's gonna be on it.
Jon Jones, just watch your mouth when you talk about me like that. You can get something broken, get your career ended in one night.
The fight took place on March 21st, 2010 at UFC Live, Vera versus Jones. From the moment the fight started, it was clear that Vera was in trouble. Jones's reach, creativity, and unpredictability were on full display. He dominated the stand-up exchanges, but the real damage came on the ground. Jones landed a devastating elbow that shattered Vera's orbital bone, forcing the referee to step in and end the fight. It wasn't just a loss, it was a beatdown. Watching the fight, you couldn't help but feel like the torch had been passed to the next generation. Jones would go on to become one of the greatest fighters in MMA history, while Vera's career continued to spiral downward. After the Jones fight, Vera's career never fully recovered. He had moments of brilliance, sure, but they were few and far between. Losses started piling up, and his once dynamic style became more conservative. It was clear that the confidence he had once carried, the swagger that made him a star, was gone. In interviews, Vera admitted that he wasn't as motivated as he used to be. The fire that had driven him to declare that he'd be a two-division champion, it had been extinguished. Fighting had become a job, not a passion. And in a sport as brutal as MMA, that is a recipe for disaster. Just when it seemed like Vera's career was winding down, he found a new home, One Championship, an MMA organization based in Asia. For Vera, this was more than just a career move. It was a fresh start. In One, he competed as a heavyweight, no longer burdened by the brutal weight cuts that had plagued him in the UFC. And guess what? He thrived. Vera won the One Heavyweight Championship and defended it multiple times, proving that he still had plenty of fight left in him. Competing in Asia also allowed Vera to connect with his Filipino heritage in a deeper way, making him a beloved figure among fans in the region. For a while, it seemed like the old Brandon Vera was back, the guy who destroyed Frank Mir, who believed he could take on the world. But as we all know, time is undefeated. Age and tougher competition eventually caught up with Vera, and in 2022, he decided to hang up his gloves for good.
Ito ngayon, you just witnessed the Truth's very last fight in MMA. I wish I could have went out on a win. I broke my damn hand again. Mahal ko kayong lahat. Salamat sa inyong pagmamahal sa akin.
So, what is the final verdict on Brandon Vera? Was he a disappointment, a cautionary tale, or something in between? The truth is, Vera's career is complicated. On one hand, he didn't live up to the enormous hype that surrounded him in the UFC. He never became a two-division champion in the UFC. In fact, he never even challenged for gold in the UFC. But on the other hand, Vera still accomplished more than most fighters ever will. He competed at the highest levels of the sport, won a major championship and won, and inspired countless fans, especially in the Filipino community. In the end, Brandon Vera's story is a reminder of how brutal and unforgiving MMA can be. For every Jon Jones or Anderson Silva, there's a Brandon Vera, a fighter who had all the tools but couldn't quite put it all together, at least not in the big league.